Elon Musk. I don't know, man. Man's crazy. Obviously, he's crazy. He's working on some crazy stuff. He lands rockets from space. He catches other parts of rockets in giant nets on robotic boats. Obviously, he's building up a $1 billion, now the most valuable vehicle manufacturer in the world. And he's digging tunnels under LA. To add on top of that, he's also trying to make us more connected with computers and interfacing the human brain with machines in a way that has never been done. You know, we're talking something straight out of Black Mirror. He even acknowledged it. He said, I know all this stuff sounds very Black Mirror-ish in his presentation of Neuralink on Friday. But things are getting crazy, man. Last time we spoke about Neuralink, we were saying, obviously, we spoke about a lot of the technological leaps that they've kind of taken in terms of electrodes being implanted in the brain. Neuralink has come up with these new, instead of it being a stiff, like metallic rod that is inserted in, they're now these threads that are almost 100 times more sensitive than the, electrodes that are more commonly used. Which not only that, but they can also not only read brain signals, but they can also technically write brain signals. They can also, release electronic pulses to communicate with the brain. Now, originally, this was supposed to be an implant that was put in the brain, and then it would be connected to the base of the ear. Now, they kind of said, all right, this is iteration 2. We're going to remove part of your skull, and it's going to sit in place of that part of the skull. So they're going to cut out a circle from your skull. The machine is going to insert these thread electrodes, and then the circular part that the electrodes are connected to is literally going to sit in the hole that was removed from your skull.
Yeah. The way they said it was
and then your skin is going to be just flapped right over it.
Yeah, the way he said it was like, oh, we're just going to remove a piece of your skull, and we're going to...
It was so casual.
Yeah, and it's like the piece that they're removing it's a significant piece. The Neuralink iteration 2 is about the size of a penny, which is
like I'd say this. It's probably like it's like a quarter, man. That thing was like it wasn't massive, but it was like sizey. Well, I could hold this in my hand.
Not a penny, like a quarter. Yeah. So and it's kind of thick because it's like the thickness of your skull. They say it's supposed to be like flush with your skull.
Yeah.
So it's not a small piece of your skull they're removing. I feel like
that part was just kind of glanced over. I mean, but it's not like they're going to go into details. It's kind of like, oh yeah, well, obviously we're going to remove part of your skull and we're going to implant this thing.
I guess for what it does, for who they're targeting it towards now at least, it is an invasive procedure, but they're targeting it towards people who have like spinal damage and or like paralyzed or fully paralyzed. And
paraplegics, quadriplegics, people who might have degenerative, not necessarily degenerative muscle, because that actually has to do with the muscles themselves, so you won't be able to move it anyway.
Yeah, for someone like that, like if you get the ability to walk again, let that robot cut a hole in my skull. I'll do it, sure. Like if I can afford 100%. It, at least.
Yeah, and that's one thing he did. They did coming down to the end of it when they were asking questions and so on. It was asked, is this something that's going to be affordable? Is it something that's going to be expensive? And obviously the first iterations, like they're actually going to be starting human trials relatively soon. They've actually gotten expedited FDA. I wouldn't say approval, but like cooperation, because it's known as a breakthrough product. So the FDA is going to be right there with them, giving them approval if needed, almost as quick as possible. So the initial versions definitely going to be expensive, but again, it's going to be experimental, and it's definitely going to be trying to nail down all of the things. But in reality, at the end of the day, it's not going to be all that expensive, because a lot of the sensors that are being used in it, a lot of the things that are being used in it, are mass produced for our phones anyway.
Yeah, well,
So
that's the Neuralink itself, but I
the
think
procedure,
what the more ambitious part of what he was saying is to get it down to like a couple of $1,000s for it to be something like LASIK. Is that you
yeah,
need a robot that they designed to do the surgery. They don't want people doing that surgery because it's you don't want anyone messing that up to permanently damage your brain or kill you.
yeah,
So I think that's the part that's going to be tougher to bring down the cost because they're going to have to somewhat mass produce that robot that does the
yeah.
surgery for it to be affordable or like somewhat affordable. He said a couple $1,000s. I think LASIK right now is I think LASIK is like 6,000. That's and he said it's
Sometimes it's as low as 2,000. Like it really depends.
all right.
Like
So
I've seen some procedures as low as $2,000. Obviously, it's still a bit expensive, but if we're talking about being able to use your limbs again, that's a drop in the bucket, especially compared to the physical therapy and all of the other things that need to happen for people who might have this spinal injuries or even caretakers. That's very cheap.
yeah, I think once they get to that point where they could, if they could have it in a bunch of different hospitals, and they have the people that can maintain it in at those hospitals or like have access to maintain it at least,
Yeah,
then once they can get that done on a large scale, then the price should come down dramatically because I think that would be the major influence driving the price because as you said it's the Neuralink itself they use the same parts that you would find in like a smartwatch.
yeah. And again, like a lot of these parts are mass produced because we do use them in our everyday lives and everyday devices. So when it comes down to the actual cost of the actual Neuralink itself, it's not going to be crazy. But like Tristan is saying, the procedure is where the money comes in.